What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got season 2 of the Club and Sub podcast coming at you live. This year, we are actually going to be brought to you by Bet Online. Best place to go to bet MMA. They get early lines. Those limits are usually 250 to 500. Pretty much they are the MMA book right now. They get props earlier than everybody else. I wish I could bet them, but unfortunately, because Jersey's run by a bunch of assholes, I cannot. But yeah, we're brought to you by them, and we actually have a giveaway here. So basically, use our promo code Club and Sub when you deposit. You get up to a 50% deposit bonus on your first deposit there, up to $8,000. So yeah, we're brought to you by Bet Online. Check it out if you do not already, and if you don't live in New Jersey. Again, guys, if you like the podcast, thanks, and please drop a like and subscribe. It would help us a lot. And yeah, looking forward to getting started this year. So tonight we got myself, John Stoyer at MMA, at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, Lags at Lags_the Capper, and coming back and joining us again, we have Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, who you can find on Twitter at MMA LOTN. So yeah, excited to get started, and we got C should be joining us shortly. But yeah, let's get into it. Fun year coming up here. We got UFC Fight Island 7, the first of 3 cards this week on GOAT Fight Week. That's what we're calling it, leading up to the Conor card. So we start with fight number 1. We got Jacob Kilburn, Austin Lingo. Luke, I'll start with you. What do you got?
Yep. So first card of the year, first fight of the night, and first bet as well. And I actually think it's probably one of the most under the radar better bets of the card. I got 1.5 units on Kilburn and Lingo under 2.5 at plus 135. It's just kind of one of these classic definitions of a violence bet spot. I think both guys have historically shown finishing upside, and I think both also have finishing upside in this fight as well, coupled with defensive irresponsibility. Those are kind of the 2 main components I'm looking at when I'm betting these violence type totals. And not to mention that if you're looking at just based on sole statistics, based on both guys' careers, they're under 2.5 hit at 61% of the time. So the fact that I was able to grab that at a plus number, I think is just a drastically mispriced line here. Ultimately, I do actually think it's a decent fight for Kilburn. Whereas, I think it's a decent fight for Lingo in the sense that he can come forward. I think his boxing is a little bit better, keep hands in his face, where, Kilburn likes to throw kind of those, kicks. He's a little bit wild and loose in terms of his defensive nature, where even though Lingo obviously has those defensive irresponsibilities, I think Lingo's really just not going to give him that kind of space that I think Kilburn needs to succeed. So I like Lingo to at least win minutes here in terms of if I'm wrong and the fight's extended, but I really don't see one here. I think I see it being a pretty solid banger. Once again, both guys finishing upside defensive irresponsibility. I think the under 2.5 hits at a solid clip.
Lock, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually on the same play here. I love the under 2.5. I actually got it at plus 113. So I'm not sure how early our guy Luke got in on it to get that plus 135 line. But I think that's a great line. I think even at plus money that this is a great bet due to the durability issues of a Jacob Kilburn, and given both of their styles, like they are primarily striking guys. I love Austin Lingo a little bit more just because he comes from that Fortis MMA crew. I'm a huge proponent of those Save Saud product guys. But he has crisp striking. Jacob Kilburn on the other hand, he seems like he has a variety of strikes, but he's really like one and done with his strikes, where he's just throwing like spinning shit, or he's throwing just a teep up the middle, whatever it is. It's not really in combinations that it seems to be throwing, but I do expect these guys to be throwing, pretty much having a firefight. I'd be surprised if either one of them decide to go the grappling route. If anything, like I feel as though Kilburn might be going for the grappling route just to kind of preserve his UFC stay, but I still feel as though we're still going to find these guys going out there and just slinging leather. So I do lean the Austin Lingo side. The minus 220 on him is a little bit too much, and I still think his path to victory is knocking Jacob Kilburn out, or he can pull off a submission later in this fight as well. But I'm not willing to pay that minus 220. I'd rather take that plus money on the under 2.5. And as soon as I saw it, I was just like, Let me dig into this a little bit. And the line has moved. We're getting minus 105 right now. So people are definitely hopping on that line. In terms of a side, I'll go with Austin Lingo. I think he gets it done. I'll probably take him by KO. But I think the under 2.5, even at even money, I think it's a solid spot. So under 2.5 is where my money's at.
Lags, what do you think?
So I'm not going to add much more. I kind of echo both of their sentiments, but I kind of just got to this fight like a little bit later in the week. So I was focused on more other stuff. So like by the time I got to it, it was -105 plus 100. So I was just kind of not really tempted by it at that point. But I totally agree with you guys. I was actually looking at it. Fight ends in round 1 is plus 280. So I think that's not a bad spot for this this fight either. But it's a pass for me. But I like the under ankle for sure.
Yeah, so I'm not going to touch on too much more. Lock and Luke, you guys summed it up pretty well. Basically, I do think it's a good spot for Lingo, kind of like you touched on, Luke. Like, obviously, he came into the UFC, touted a bit as a knockout artist. I think he was a favorite against Yusuf Zalal. Just turns out, Zalal is a UFC-level athlete who has a reasonable ground game, and that was more than enough to shut him out. But that said, if they let Austin Lingo just sit down in the bottom rungs of, the division and dumpster dive, he's probably going to add a couple more KOs here. And so I'm not saying he necessarily will KO Jacob Kilburn. Like, I think to everybody's point, I do think there's probably a little bit of value in Kilburn, not enough to make it worth playing, just because they're both, neither's really UFC level. But I do think Lingo's the better boxer, and I do think Kilburn athletically and defensively is more along the lines of the guys Lingo was knocking out en route to the UFC. I like the under here. I haven't played it yet. I'm still looking at it. It looks like I probably should get on it. I'm seeing -115 on dimes right now. And I do have one small play. This is the first piece on the first Lambeau parlay of the new year. It's Lingo by KO. So, yeah. But nothing, I don't feel too strongly about it either way. We move on. We got Sarah Moras taking on Vanessa Melo. Lock, you got anything here?
Do we really have to talk about this fight? Come on, guys. I thought we were going to skip this shit. Okay, first of all, Sarah Moras at -220, pass city. But even Vanessa Melo, up to like plus 300, you're just still like, fuck this. I'm not betting this chick, right? Both of them pretty low level. We got a 6-6 against I believe a 6-4, if I'm not mistaken. Really terrible records to begin with. But yeah, Moras just super durable. In that fight against Liana Juju, we saw that durability, come to fruition, and then eventually get that third round stoppage. She's just been around for so long. I'm surprised that they're still holding on to her. Not only am I surprised they're holding on to her, they're holding on to Vanessa Melo, who's on a 3-fight losing streak. Like, what the fuck are they thinking? So I think this is definitely like a loser leaves town type of matchup. I'm not impressed with either woman here. Vanessa Melo, very flat-footed, moves forward, doesn't really cut any angles or anything like that. She's just trying to trudge forward and try to land her shots, and more often than not, she's falling short on them. I'm gonna side with Sarah Moras here, but I'm not touching this fight at all. No DGen parlays, no Lambeau parlays, nothing. I'm not touching this shit at all. But I'll go with Sarah Moras here. Yeah, exactly. Right. Shout out to my guy Ryan Diamond.
Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty similar. I don't really think you could put any money on this fight and be confident on a side or even a total, to be honest. Both of these fighters are fadeable in the UFC. I actually faded Melo in her last fight against Carol Rosa. I had 2 units on her, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think pretty much this is a loser leaves town type of spot. Can't really play it at all. Would lean Moras, but slight favorite. Nothing crazy.
Yeah. I mostly agree. Our boy C actually had, I think he got 3 units on Melo, to be honest.
Oh my god,
he's got a big bet on the dog here. And so, like,
I actually think, to be honest, too, I think he said he was sprinkling the KO, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. So to be honest, I liked a lot of like aspects of it when I was initially starting to tape, and I'm like, man, Cheesecake's awful, and Melo really could fuck her up. But then, like, kind of to Locke's point, she doesn't cut angles at all. And, like, pretty much if you just, like, swing arms at her and run forward, she'll back right up. And, when she gets back, like, if you watch the fight with Cortez, she was lighting Cortez up on the feet early in that fight. The problem is Cortez then, realized, oh, I'm a wrestler. I should do what I do and just push her backwards. And even when she couldn't take her down, you watch Melo work. Melo really doesn't have any way to get off the fence. Like, she doesn't really dig underhooks. She kind of just like sits there and like kind of just throws weak body shots on the fence. And so it's like, I looked at it and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, maybe there's some value here. Like, Moras really can't strike. She doesn't land takedowns well. But, even though she's not a good wrestler at all, Moras is reliable to go forward and look to land takedowns. And so I just kind of think the most likely scenario is Moras just getting a ton of clinch time. Maybe she takes her down and finishes her. I actually don't mind the under 2.5 in case of that eventuality. But yeah, no play for me. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so I actually did a super deep dive on this. You guys know I love my WMMA because I was trying to find an angle. And, anytime you see a minus 250 next to Sarah Moras, you kind of just have to look at the other side. But, really after looking at it, I don't think it's actually a bad spot for Sarah Moras, assuming she's coming out here and looking to land takedowns. Like if she just decides to get into this, stand up back and forth pitter patter game, well, that plus 210 on Mello, I think is going to look pretty good. And I know a lot of people say, well, Luke, I mean, if you look at Moras's, takedown numbers, she only lands at like 25%, less than one takedown per fight. How can you really trust her to do it? I definitely hear that sentiment. But to me, it's like when we've seen Vanessa Mello taken down, despite her being a black belt, she possesses absolutely no threat from her back. She's not aggressive there in terms of attacking subs, elbowing from bottom, shrimping, looking to sweep, looking to get back up. She's just pretty much dead weight on bottom. So my big thing is like, despite those issues with Sarah Moras in terms of, offensive takedown upside, to me, it's like if she gets one takedown, I think she can just win the round, if actually not potentially just finish her on top and just posture up and land grounded pounds. So I'm not saying like minus 250 on Moras is justified by any means. Once again, it's low level. Definitely variance comes into play here. But to me, assuming Moras takes the right game plan here, I think it's a decent spot for her.
All right, C, hit me with your take.
Yeah, I played Mello for 2 units, like plus 215. Honestly, I don't really see like I guess if you want to like rely on Moraz in the clinch, like I could see that. Mello does look pretty bad in the clinch, but if you're laying like minus 250, and that's kind of your hope, I think you're gonna get burned. But I mean, Mello, Cortez had to grind to get takedowns. It's not like she's just, super. It's not like her takedown defense is horrendous, and Moraz doesn't really have great takedowns herself. And if you look at who Mello's fought, like Rosa, Irene, they stick and move. They're hard to kind of deal with on the feet offensively. Whereas like Mello will come forward, which means quite a bit in WMMA, and she'll attempt to throw. Moraz doesn't throw like inside leg kicks, so I don't really see her having any the same difficulties she had with like Rosa and Irene on the feet. And even the Cortez fight, like I think Cortez had to work a bit. Striking wise, though, obviously Cortez has quicker hands. So it didn't look like, as competitive. But in the Mello fights that we've seen, like Irene and Rosa, even when she's getting her ass kicked, she's moving forward. And Sarah sucks. Like, I don't know. Just it is what it is. Like, I don't think Sarah's that good. Kind of give her the fight that Mello wants, in my opinion. I think Sarah is like 60%. I think it's 60-40. So I'm fine taking a 2-unit shot on Mello.
Yeah, that's fair. So we move on. We got our next fight of the evening, or the afternoon, actually. We got David Zawada taking on Ramazan Emeev. Lags, you want to start here?
Yeah, so I actually have Ramazan Emeev by decision in a little parlay for 1 unit. So the parlay closes out at plus 200. But yeah, pretty much I think that Emeev's just going to be able to dictate the pace here, dictate the striking, work in his takedown, and utilize a lot of top time here and find himself on the edge of the decision. Most of his fights in the UFC have gone to decision, usually on the winning side, obviously. And I really just don't think Zawada is going to have those submission abilities off of his back here. So I like Emeev by decision here.
Yeah, I have the same play. I don't have him in a parlay, but I have 1 unit on Emeev plus 120. To be honest, like looking into the tape, like I kind of went into it kind of wanting to play Zawada. Like I do think Zawada is I don't know about much better striker, but I think he's a better striker, and he's certainly a busier striker than Emeev is. And like I thought going in, I'm like, Emeev's wrestling, I really don't rate it much at all. Like he attempts a lot of takedowns, but his entries are kind of slow, and he doesn't do much on top. But then it's like you look at the tape, and like Zawada is really, he's Carlos Condit-esque in how he defends takedowns. Like, he's just very easy to take down. He doesn't really look to work up. He looks to work off his back. And like Emeev, for all the issues I have with his general work rate, he doesn't really put himself in bad spots on the mat. Like, it would be pretty surprising to me if you saw a repeat of the Abubakar fight. Like, I'd be shocked if Zawada triangled him. And so ultimately, I kind of think, if Ameev does what he does every fight, which is methodically come forward and attempt takedowns, he's probably going to end up with 8 to 10 minutes of top time and win a decision pretty easy. I don't really think he's much of a threat to finish here. He doesn't really throw much ground and pound, nor does he attack submissions particularly aggressively. He's kind of more content to just kind of ride out top time. I actually don't think he has a submission in or a finish in his last 9 fights. It's something crazy like that. So yeah, I don't. Why play the minus 260 when you can get plus 120 on that? I kind of think decision line should be closer to minus 150, to be honest with you. So yeah, I have 1 unit on Ameev by decision. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so I haven't played it yet, but I'm kind of right in the similar line of thinking as well, where I kind of gave a little bit of credence to Sawada as well, just because, he will go forward. He will, throw strikes. Ameev historically is, not this high output guy. But one thing I really noticed, at least in terms of Ameev's striking defense, it's elite from a stats number. It's at the best of the division. So it's obviously, when we're talking about, winning minutes and whatnot, you want to, have your money on a guy that you're backing in terms of higher strike ratio. But it's if you really look at it, he controls distance so well, at least largely when on the feet. He's been dinged a few times, he got hit with a knee, I believe, one time, but largely he controls distance really well. And on the ground, as you guys touched on, he's just really defensively responsible. Guys have thrown up a couple things on him, but his posturing has always been on point. So with that, I don't see, as you touched on, John, the whole Abubakar ×2 scenario here, where I think it was really just one small mistake from him where he didn't posture. That's why he got triangled, and just one small mistake. So I don't see that coming from Ameev. So if you are to play this fight, I think that's definitely the way to play it. If not, if you're more so on, I give more credence to Zawada. I really struggle to see him actually winning minutes in this fight, despite him actually having a more aggressive tendency and Ameev being low output, but I think he just controls that distance well. He controls pace of fights well in general. So I think that's how you should play the fight.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I would just play Ameev by decision, kind of an anti-finisher. So, yeah, I agree with you guys. I don't have any super strong takes here.
Lock?
Yeah, you guys pretty much nailed it. It's been 7 fights since we've seen Ameev get a finish. He got an anaconda choke over former UFC wildman Miguel Falcao back in his M1 days. But yeah, he's just very efficient, low output, like Luke was talking about. He has I find it weird with his body frame. He has this very long torso, which allows him to kind of use that striking defense. He's one of the more weirdly framed guys in the UFC, but he uses it very well. I just wish he had a little bit more output to his game, which would make me a little bit more confident in him. But I do exactly see him going out there and kind of just wet blanketing David Zawada here. I think he'll be able to get him down. I don't think he'll be able to get tapped or anything like that. There were a couple of times in that Nicholas Stolce fight where we did see Stolce not get close to submissions, but he had some close, deep submissions, right? Where it looked a little bit skeptical for Ameev. So that scares me a little bit. I feel like Zawada may go a little bit harder for those types of jiu-jitsu or those submissions, and I feel like he has a higher level of jiu-jitsu than Stolce as well. So that gives me a little bit of a pause. But I don't mind that decision line that Legs and John were playing around that even money line. I think that's a solid spot, especially given how efficient and low output that Ameev has been. I just don't see how Zawada is going to get it done. I think it will be a close fight. I don't want to sweat it myself, but the decision prop is definitely a solid one. So yeah, I'll go with Ameev via decision here.
Yeah, fair. We move on. We got this is a fun one. Justin Taffa taking on Carlos Felipe. Many moons ago, roughly 13, I placed a max bet, 5 units on Juan Adams against Justin Taffa. I deservedly caught all sorts of shit for that. I said this on Lock's End of the Year podcast, and I will reiterate it here. One of these days in the UFC, you are going to see Justin Taffa put on his back, and everybody will understand why I made the bet that I did, even if it was perhaps ill-advised to put 5 units on Juan Adams. Will this be the spot? I don't know. But I'll tell you this. I did take a small nibble of Carlos Felipe 0.25 units by submission at plus 2,100. He seems to fight to a game plan pretty well. And honestly, I know he's only a blue belt, but I think there are guys in my gym who would sub Justin Taffa, to be literally completely honest with you. And so, if he actually goes to the grappling, I actually think there's a chance he could sub him. Don't think that's likely. I have one other play here. Personally, I don't rate Taffa at all, as I'm sure you can tell. Obviously, the guy hits hard. I've seen some takes that this should be evens, and I think that's – I don't know. I don't really agree with it. Felipe is a pressure boxer, and those wide hooks Taffa throws, I don't think are going to work very well. And, when we've seen Taffa regionally, when he gets tagged up, he tends to just try to clinch right away, except he doesn't, really do much in the clinch. And so I kind of just think Felipe is going to wear on him as this fight goes on. Taffa, he's got power and he's got the ability to stop Felipe early in this fight, but he doesn't have a great gas tank. And I just kind of think, Felipe, maybe the first round's close, but I think Felipe is going to start taking over the later this fight goes. And Felipe so far, we saw him eat some bombs against DeCastro. We saw him eat bombs against Spivak. He seems super durable. So I'm pretty confident he takes over this fight at some point. And I made a small play on Felipe round 3 or decision for 1 unit of plus 150. So, yeah, I like Felipe. I even think there's value on the money line. I'm just a little skittish about laying minus 190 in a heavyweight fight. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so I don't want to say I've done a 180 on Felipe necessarily, because I was a guy who honestly I had Yorgan De Castro as a part of a parlay with Dusko Todorovic over Daquan Townsend and last time. Well, that went ahead and went flat on its face completely. But I guess just real quick sidebar, I guess what I valued way too much in that fight was the leg kicking game of De Castro. And when Felipe came out there and said, I'm going to check leg kicks, it was almost like DeCastro was like, I don't know what to do now. And then we pretty much saw what happened there. So ultimately, I went back and did another, moderately deep dive. There's a ton of tape out there on him, but I don't think I actually gave him enough credit in terms of the Spivak fight. There was obviously the really disconcerting third round there. But even in terms of the stand-up, it was moderately competitive. He's a guy who's going to go forward. He's going to chuck strikes. And really, I love that in this matchup because at least in terms of Justin Taffa, he's one of these guys who I don't think has seen a third round or even has went to the cards in his pro career, where we've seen a guy, once again, this is heavyweight, who has went to the cards multiple times, has shown to be able to at least keep up with a decent output over the course of 15 minutes. So who also I think is extremely durable. So it's one of those scenarios where I think Taffa's largely KO or bust. I don't really see minute winning ability out of him, at least in the aggregate, unless Justin Taffa shows up and he's a new guy. But I really think it's actually a solid spot for Felipe. I was originally considering the over 1.5, but why that kind of also makes me nervous is that I think that Taffa might only have a couple minutes of gas if he really throws the kitchen sink and Felipe really puts it on him. Felipe might finish him early, so I actually just decided playing it straight. I got 2 units on Felipe at minus 185.
See.
Yeah, I like Felipe. I think Taffa is pretty hopeless, just in general. Boxing, pressure, durability, better cardio. Honestly, the only thing that's preventing me from playing him is it just being heavyweight. Any other division, I'm probably just playing Felipe for 2 units. But yeah, I mean, I think Taffa is just hopeless in general. His game kind of sucks. So,
Lock.
Yeah, I'm with you guys right there as well. I think a lot of people give a lot of credence to Taffa's kickboxing experience, and for some reason they just always say, "Oh, he's always live to knock somebody out." But you could say the same thing for guys like Zaruk Adashev and other guys that have kickboxing backgrounds who go out there and get knocked the fuck out, right? So my thing with Felipe is originally I was a little bit hesitant to go into this fight and actually bet him because I'm just given his attitude and the way that he is in the cage, always kind of just cheering guys on and telling them, "Oh, let's go scrap," right? But when you really look at his fights, he moves well. He has good footwork. He rolls with punches very well too. He has good overall game too, and he has a good gas tank for a guy with his type of physique, right? So I'm very I'm almost in the same boat as Luke, where I almost did a 180 on Felipe as well too, right? I didn't bet on Yorgan De Castro or anything like that, but yeah, it definitely changed right after he started checking the leg kicks, right? And that's where it definitely changed for Jorgen. So, yeah, no, I like Philippe here. I actually did end up putting in a small parlay with something later in this fight card. Yeah, I like him to win this fight. Tafa is just hot garbage, and I'm not really down to be betting on a guy that's like round one KO or bust type of thing, right? And yeah, when he is faced with opposition, he kind of folds. You know what I mean? When guys are more often than not, even in his regional fights, like he's almost losing most of those fights before he deads these guys, right? But I just don't see him kind of dealing with the pressure and the pace of Carlos Felipe that well. So that's where I think things will go downhill for Tafa. So I give Tafa like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. If he's not able to get him out of there that quickly, I think Felipe's pace and just staying in his face is just going to be too much for him. So I like Felipe. I'm going the more conservative route, and I think he just like maybe wins this fight later in the fight, maybe later in the fight, maybe even a decision. But I really want to see what Tafa's cardio is like over that 3-round stretch. Is he even going to be able to make it off the stool in that third round, right? Given the style that Felipe actually brings to the table. So I like Felipe. I'll go decision, but I could absolutely see a finish later in there. And that's a ballsy prop play for you, John, with that submission. That's a sharp spot. It could definitely come to fruition. Personally, I think it could be a ground and pound situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, the submission is definitely live, especially at those crazy odds. Plus 2,100 is what it's currently at. So yeah, solid shit there. But I got Felipe for sure.
Lags, how about you?
So I actually am playing the over 1.5 here. I actually have 1 unit on it for minus 155. I think just not to add much more onto it, but pretty much I'm not going as heavier as kind of like what Luke touched on. It's still like the top of gas tank is a question mark, but the problem is he's fighting Felipe, who will bring that type of pace, that pressure, that output that could cause him to gas out even sooner if that pressure is just so much for him to deal with. But I just kind of think that the whole Tafa KO early narrative isn't going to happen here. I just don't think that percentage is high enough to warrant it. So I think the over 1.5 solid spot here. I think the durability of Felipe's going to get him to a decision win probably, or like John's on a late finish.
Yeah, agreed. All right, I'm glad we're all in agreement on that. So we move on. We go from a fun heavyweight fight to Wu Yinan and Jocelyn Edwards. This is where we are. Luke, what do you got, my man?
I think he's out.
Done.
All right, Lock, what do you got, my man?
Yeah, so we've seen the line swing here, right?
Yeah.
Like I think Jocelyn Edwards is around a plus 140 dog, and I think everybody started to do their tape and do their due diligence, and they started reining the money in on Edwards, and I don't blame them. The girl shows off some pretty good skills, and she arguably won that fight against Sarah Alpar. Even the commentators who were scoring that fight, they thought that she won. I personally thought she won based off of damage. Like if we're going with the judging criteria, right? It's damage then cage control. What fucking damage did Sarah Alpar do in that fight, right? Like almost nothing. So I like what I'm seeing from Jocelyn. It is going to be interesting to see how she deals with grapplers moving forward, especially in her UFC career. Is Wu Yinan going to be that girl? Probably not. I find it weird also though that she has a relationship, like a fighting coach relationship with Marlon Sandro, who used to be a Bellator fighter as well too, right? Not often that you see that type of like a Brazilian and Chinese fighter like going together and just training together, right? So it's very awkward to see them kind of in the cage together. But they're doing good work. She went out there, submitted Lauren Mueller, and earned her blue belt that night. But what I like from Wu, she has great output. She throws over like 200 strikes in her fights. Maybe not the most pop on them. Maybe misses the majority of them too. But the fact that she's actually going out there making activity, making some sort of action, it obviously scores in the judges' scorecards a bit, right? But I think that the range and the striking of Jocelyn Edwards is going to cause a little bit of problems here for you, for Wu Yinan. I think the only concern here, though, I have is if it does reach a decision, what that output looks like. You know, I mean, I think the more damaging strikes are going to come from Edwards. I think that she has the better overall game. We saw in her last fight completely pulverize a poor girl in Pamela Gonzalez who just didn't want to be in that cage. I felt horrible watching that. I felt like I should have been arrested for watching that shit. That was bad. But yeah, she just went out there. It just seemed like she was just fed up with this whole COVID thing, wanted to get back on track. She knew she was so close to the UFC. She dropped that fight to Sarah Alpar in the fight before. But luckily for her, now she has a short notice opportunity to go in there and showcase that she deserves to be in the UFC, and I think we'll see that from her here. So I do like Edwards. I think she gets a decision here, but the only thing that makes me a little bit iffy is that possible output from Wu Yunan and what that might have an effect on the judges, right? So I like Edwards. I think she'll have the more damaging strikes. She does a good job of maintaining distance as well too. So I'll give that to her. But yeah, I like Edwards, and I'm very excited to see what she has for the UFC division. I think she has a bright future, man. She shows some good tools, and she's young too. She's only 25, so really looking forward to what she brings to the table. So I'll go with Edwards via decision here.
Lex, how about you?
No super strong opinions here, to be honest. And even in the original iteration with Betch, Kohei, and Wu Yanan, I didn't have a super strong opinion there, to be honest. So pass.
Yeah, I actually had a bet on Betch by decision originally, plus 175, which I feel like was like the fucking line of the year, to be honest with you. But anyway, with this fight, like, I agree with a lot of what you said, Locke. I'm generally – so, like, I saw it. I taped this when Edwards was still up there, like, plus 140, plus 150. My problem, I guess, is – like, look, I agree with you. Like, I thought she won the Alpar fight as well. Like, that was a close fight. But then you look, and, like, she goes and fights Pamela Gonzalez, who's 3-4. Before that, she fights Brenda Gonzalez, and, 8-3. But before that, 3-3, 0-1, 1-0, 1-1. And it's like, I agree she has the physicality edge, which is generally enough for me in most women's fights, except it's like she is low output. And going from, pounding cans regionally in Brazil to now stepping up to fight, I don't really rate Wu Yanan, but, like, it wouldn't – like, I do expect Edwards to win this fight, to be honest, but, like, it wouldn't shock me if it turns out that Edwards just doesn't know how to deal with the angles or the movement of Wu and looks like a big dog. Like, not really, and that's kind of my concern. Like, if Wu's, I guess, ability to read angles and read movement at the UFC level is as good as, like, her power is, she's going to absolutely clean Wu Yanan's clock here. I just don't have that faith. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, Juliana Velasquez and Olympe McFarlane, in Bellator a couple months or a month back. And, like, while Velasquez won that fight, everybody kind of looked at her like, oh, look at how good her striking is. She's smoking these girls. But it's like she's fighting a bunch of 3-1 girls, and then she fights McFarlane, who's, not a good striker, but it's not as easy to hit people when they're not standing right in front of you. And, like, that's really my concern here. Like, I think Edwards has all the physical tools. I think she has all the finishing ability here. But Wu's movement, and to your point, Locke, that output really scares me. Like I said, if we see this weird thing where, like, Edwards ends up getting gun shy or just can't track her down, it wouldn't totally shock me. So I'm excited to see it because I think Edwards is intriguing, but I want to see how she does, like, with this test first. Luke, what's your take?
Yeah, as much as I love my WMMA, this is one of those fights I actually really just don't have a strong take on. I was kind of hoping, I always loved, these kind of high volume, high output type of fights. You might get, a really great plus number, on that under 2.5 potential finishing ability. Obviously, it is a big plus number, but it's not a fight, that I'm really looking to target in that sense. I definitely think there's merit to both girls. I think you guys brought up a lot of good points, touched on pretty much everything. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it's moderately lovable. But what I will say, John, is I think there was some merit to the Betch decision line. That was a flag I might have been willing to plant and just getting smoked for, but I thought that was a really sneaky good play.
It was a gift.
Original iteration.
I was hoping to fade Betch Kohei one last time. I don't know. She's hanging them up, guys. We got to take advantage of that. I can't believe you guys were on her side. But then again, I didn't get too deep into that. I was just like, hey, fucking fade Betch the last time out.
Locke, I'm a sucker for losing money on Betch Kohei. So. But anyway, we move on. We got a fun one here. This is the first real – I don't know. I mean, I guess there's some other bangers here. But this is the one that's really going to get you out of your seat. We got – Nasruddin Imavov taking on Phil Hawes. Lags, what do you got for me?
So I don't have a super strong read on Imavov based on the limited tape that we kind of have on him, but, like, I pretty much think that I don't know. I don't rate him too highly. I don't think he does anything great, to be honest with you. I kind of think this is a good spot for Hawes, but again, the cardio issue is just such a concern that I'm not really looking to back him. I think Hawes round 1 probably would be the spot, and to be honest, we were talking about it in our chat before, John. It was plus 410, and I kind of think that's crazy considering that's basically his win condition. But yeah, I like Hawes round 1.
Yeah, I don't disagree much with you, to be honest with you. So, like, I bet Jordan Williams against Nasruddin Imavov whenever that fight was 2-3 months ago. like pretty confidently. I got a bad number there, but like I just looked at it. Like if you look at Imavov's regional tape, the guy's got basically no striking defense whatsoever. Like I just think he's a lot of volume. He's decent power, but defensively he's a mess. And to be honest, through one round, it looked pretty much like I envisioned. Williams landed more than 50% of his strikes in the first round. He hurt him. He won the round on 2 cards. And I don't know if it was the diabetes, if it was the headbutts, but Williams gassed for the first time in his career that fight, and then Imavov went on to put on a clinic the last 2 rounds, but still couldn't put him away. And like now I'm sitting here and I'm looking, and like everybody on Bet MMA is all over Imavov in this fight, and like I don't like Phil Hawes. Like I was pretty vocal about this before his last fight. I might have even said some things that were very untoward toward him that I won't repeat, but I do think he's got the athleticism advantage here. To me, he's got the clear power advantage. He's probably got the grappling advantage. My concerns about Imavov, basically always having his chin up and being a huge defensive liability haven't changed that much. I still think that's the case. I think Hawes is very live to just nuke him in the first round. To be honest, like if I had any faith in Hawes' cardio holding up, I'd be on him pretty big here. I don't have that faith in him, unfortunately, so I'm passing. But he is the second piece of the Lambeau parlay, and that is Hawes' first round KO plus 380. It's coming. Luke, what do you got?
Yeah, it's a really interesting fight. You guys touched on a lot of good points. Like I think from a straight perspective, like if you got in on this one around Imavov at like plus 150. I definitely get it. But now that it's kind of creeped down a little bit more, I don't know. I don't know about it so much because as you touched on, John, I think there are just so many defensive issues with him on the feet. He's one of these guys who just kind of largely relies on the whole, lean back head movement type thing. It's like not really something that's a great, asset, especially when you're talking about capping a fight against Phil Hawes. And then coupled with that, like I did a really deep dive on him, man. If you go back and watch some of this dude's regional tape, even though I think he has improved in this capacity to some extent, dude has gotten grinded by some really bad guys in terms of the wrestling, like grinded extensively by some really, really bad guys. And so, people say, we haven't, despite Hawes's like credential background, went to the same college, John Jones, all that, haven't seen a ton of, his offensive wrestling upside in the UFC. Once again, I still think if you're, kind of comparing apples to apples there, I'd still say, gun to my head, that Phil Hawes has more wrestling upside than some of the jabrones that this guy's gotten grinded out on the regional scene despite even winning fights just in terms of minutes. But Phil Hawes is one of these guys that I think is still just kind of a massive question mark. I think he could turn out to be a really solid, UFC fighter, or he could just turn out to be a massive bust. But in everything I'm getting back to is I feel like Hawes is one of these guys that has this anomalous type power. I feel like Imavov has the tools to actually win minutes potentially in this fight, assuming he's able to fight long. I do think he's faster. But, Hawes is going to come in, he's going to close distance. And he's going to try to throw shots and take his head off, apparently, maybe mix in his wrestling too. So we'll see. It's ultimately a fight I don't have a great read on, but I do feel like Hawes might be one of these guys who falls into the anomalous type power category for me, where it doesn't matter. He might be potentially losing minutes, but he'll just kill the guy. And those defensive irresponsibilities that you talked about in Imavov just concern me like crazy. So, I mean, I get the Imavov bets. I wouldn't trust backing Hawes straight by any means because there's nothing out there that can suggest that he can win minutes. But I'm going Hawes to nuke him.
See.
Yeah, no super strong opinions. I think Imanov, Hawes round 1, Imanov round 3, some combination of those. But yeah, I kind of think Hawes, like skill set wise, is probably the better MMA fighter. I just have some questions, really more so in terms of his cardio. I don't even think that it's necessarily that he can't win minutes. I just don't know what's going to happen after 7.5 minutes. And Imanov, yeah, I mean, I think the best route for him is playing a rangy game. But, defensively, he has some monster flaws. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not too certain on it. Honestly, minus 130 on Hawes, I kind of think it's value. Again, after like 7.5 minutes, I don't know where the fight goes. I'm pretty confident for the first 7.5 minutes, Hawes will be winning. It's more so I just don't know what happens after, he gasses if Imanov doesn't get put out on the feet. So, yeah, that's where I stand.
Yeah, agreed. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, like last time around, I bit the bullet and faded Phil Hawes and paid for it pretty much immediately. Jacob Malcolm getting dusted right away. Probably one of my lowest moments of the year. But yeah, that's lets you guys know what I think about Phil Hawes. Like I truly, it's really his gas tank. Like if he's not able to nuke you early, it gets a little bit fishy later. But what I find interesting is he's jumped around camps so often. Like first and foremost, he was known as that guy from Jackson Wink, being one of John Jones's main training partners. They put him on the Ultimate Fighter. He loses to, I think it was Andrew Sanchez, doesn't even make it into the house. And then he goes on to the Contender Series. He gets deaded by Julian Marquez. And then after that, he finally changes training camps. We see him in Bellator. He has Tiger Shulman in his corner. I was like, what? Okay, I guess you're going to Shulman. And then he shows up to the Contender Series and he has fucking Sanford MMA in his corner. Like he just can't find where he wants to settle down. But he's been with Sanford MMA for the last little while now. Well, I liked what we saw in that Bestayev fight where he was kind of chopping the leg down first and kind of just setting up his power punches, which is better than just lunging forward and hoping that you're going to dead the dude, more than fucking Francis Ngannou. That's kind of like what I like to like compare him to, is just focusing on that power. If you're not able to get that power, then things get a little bit sketchy. I'm hoping that's the kind of approach that he takes, like a little bit of a conservative approach where he starts to pick guys apart. The leg kick is a great way to start. You know what I mean? It's the closest thing to you. It's probably the thing that you can land on that will allow you to stay away from great counters from your opponent. But yeah, it's that cardio. Even if he just goes out there and just fucking stares at him and throws like 15 leg kicks in the first round, how he's going to look in that second round, right? He's going to be moving around. He's going to be dodging the shots of Imavov. So definitely he's going to be exerting some power and some energy. So that's why I can't trust his cardio. That's where it gets sketchy for me. Round one, Phil Hawes is really the only thing. You know what I mean? It's plus 275 right now. If you mix in that KO as well, I'm not sure what that line is at, plus 400 you guys are saying. I think that's as well too. But yeah, I feel like there is going to be a good spot to fade Phil Hawes. I thought it was fucking Jacob Malkoun. I'll eat my words on that one. I don't get the sense that Imavov is the guy to do it either. I don't know what this like. It seems like the entire community outside of everybody in here is on Imavov, right? Like the line has moved drastically. Everybody's on him, and they're making it sound like a foregone conclusion, right? I feel as though Phil Hawes has, like Luke was saying, that different power, that power that just transcends everybody else, right? So he could absolutely land a big bomb on him. One thing I do want to note as well too, that some people may not have seen, he actually moved his training camp over to Switzerland for the last 5 weeks to train with Volkan Oezdemir. I think it's more so to just get acclimated with that side of the world, time difference and all that type of shit. And obviously Volkan, we know he's already has ties with Sanford and MMA, so I'm sure it's still like all the same training camp and stuff. But yeah, I think that's a good little small factor in terms of making those small things to make a big result, which is him hopefully going out there and knocking out Imavov. With that said, I'm not betting Phil Hawes at minus 130. I'm not betting that KO line. I know I'm going to fade this guy in the future again, but this is not the spot that I thought I was going to that I'm going to be doing it at. I'm good with just passing on this, letting it go. And he did knock out that Bestayev guy that was like 6'6". This guy has a 3-inch height advantage on him this time around. So if he's able to reach that 6'6" shit, he's going to find this 6'6" at a certain point. Again, as long as he sets it up. We have the defensive striking flaws of Imavov as well too, like we've talked about. But yeah, I like Phil here. But it kind of reminds me of Bill Algeo against Spike Carlisle, where I'm like, okay, Spike's going to go starch this dude because of Bill Algeo just striking defensively, not that sound, at least from what I was seeing. And yeah, Algeo was able to survive that first round and pull off that decision victory. I don't see the same thing happening here, but I will fucking eat my words if that's what ends up happening. But I'm going with Phil Hawes first round KO. That's the only way you play this fight if you're backing Phil Hawes.
Yeah, I agree. Great analysis, Buck. Legs, did I touch you? I hit you already, right?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
All right, so we move on to, I think this fight's going to have a lot of plays on it. We got Punahele Soriano taking on Dusko Todorovic. See, I'll start with you. What do you got?
Yeah, I played Dusko for 2.5 units at I think minus 120. Yeah, something like that. I don't know, whatever. I played it like pretty early. Yeah, I think Soriano. Just like if you could just fade somebody at face value. Generally, someone that you don't really know their cardio's like, doesn't really throw in combinations. Hasn't really met any type of resistance, and you can get them at even money. It's normally a pretty safe bet. But yeah, I guess my opinion on Soriano is more, he's more reliant on just being like having explosive movements than he is like being technical at anything really on the feet. He throws just looping shots, doesn't really set them up well. I mean, sometimes I see him throw that front kick. But again, I mean, if you're just winging hooks versus someone like Dusko, who's probably, I think the biggest concern with Dusko is just the way he keeps his chin up high, which, generally I'm pretty concerned about somebody like that. But, to Dusko's credit, he seems pretty fucking durable. He rolls pretty well. There's like maybe the last, I don't know, minute versus Teddy Ash, where he's got his head up and he's just fucking rolling for like 35 seconds and Ash lands nothing and Bisping's like, holy fuck, Ash. Yeah, I think Dusko, Dusko's definitely going to test him just cardio wise. And I think Dusko's game on the feet is way more technical offensively. And in the clinch, I mean, that's, I've seen some like wild takes, I guess, on Soriano in the clinch situation. And like Dusko's best part of his game is the clinch. So like, it's like kind of confusing to me where people are like concerned about the clinch situation. I'm like, what are you guys watching? I mean, Dusko's body work is pretty fucking serious in the clinch. Even, you haven't seen, there's not many scenarios where he's off his back. But, if I just take what now, I guess, information we have, Dusko's background is grappling. So it's pretty safe to say that everything that Soriano hasn't faced, he's going to face it here in Dusko. Somebody who has cardio, who's ultra durable, who's going to put Soriano on his back foot. And even if Soriano decides to wrestle, I don't really think he's faced anybody with the jiu-jitsu of Dusko. So I'm pretty confident in Dusko. At the current price, I'd rather play some form of the over. And if I was playing Soriano, I probably would just be playing round one. Because I think there's major question marks about what happens after the first round. Even versus Pickett, I mean, he totally slowed down, and Pickett wore his shots. So that's where I stand.
Lock.
Yeah, I won't be playing a side here. I am on the Soriano side, but I do see the cases that C brought up here. I feel as though that it's going to be a little bit harder for him to truly get that clinch game going against Soriano. He may have some success for sure, but I think that the power and the strength of Soriano might come into play here. How long, though, I'm not sure, right? The cardio is the issue here with Soriano, and that's why I don't like playing guys that have cardio issues, right? That's my only concern here with Soriano. I'll give him some props for showing a little bit of good fight IQ in that fight against Jamie Pickett, where he took the fight to the ground, knowing that he was a little bit gassed and kind of just riding out that top position, doing some good damage from on top. But Dusko, for some reason, I don't know why I have this in my head, but I feel as though he has a little bit of that cardio issue for himself too, but not to the extent of a guy like Punahele Soriano, right? I feel like we do see him slow down a little bit. With Teddy Ash, that was a weird fight where he just pretty much clinch fucked him the entire time. Great clinch work as well. Obviously, sticking his forehead into his chin, into his chest, and just doing some good dirty boxing and some good dirty striking inside that clinch position, right? Yeah, I don't know what it is about Dusko. I still feel as though we have some question marks on him too. These guys are both undefeated, 10-0 for for Dushko, 7-0 for Punahale. And I need to see more from these guys before I can confidently go out there and put money on either one here, right? I'm still leaning on the Soriano side. I feel as though that we will see him successful with those takedowns later in the fights once his cardio starts to come into question. But then it comes into that's where I really want to see where Dushko's cardio is at, because that's where I feel like it will shine, if anything, if I'm wrong about his cardio issues, right? So I'm obviously on the feet. C hit the nail on the head in terms of Punahale being more of a wild looping striker, whereas Dushko looks a little bit more comfortable on the feet, very light on his feet too, moves in and out very well. Almost a karate-ish type of style where he's just bouncing on his on the tips of his toes, on the foot, whatever the fuck, right? But doing a good job in that aspect. But yeah, I'm going with Punahale here. I'm not. I have absolutely no confidence in betting it, but in terms of what I watched and what I came back with, I'm going with Punahale. Probably by decision. The durability of Dushko is there, and I think that we'll see him at least squeak out 2 rounds here. So I'll go with Puna.
Legs.
So I also have a unit on Dushko at -120. The FanDuel had up as well. Yeah, so to pick up kind of where Steve's talking about with the grappling, this is pretty much the biggest step up in competition grappling wise for Soriano. And I kind of think that when he matches that resistance, I don't really know how that's going to go. And even if the takedowns do happen, I don't really think that he's going to be able to hold him that long. He doesn't really have that great top control. And we've seen him have solid get ups from the ground that. So I don't know. I just kind of think that the Soriano love is kind of overblown. I think that the early finish is kind of the only path to victory I see for him. And yeah, I see Todorovic kind of rolling here.
Yeah, I'm also on Dushko. I played a unit and a half at -115. I capped it personally like 65%. Like my view is, I do think Soriano can land takedowns. His actual offensive takedown game is pretty good. Like he's got pretty good level change, he's very powerful in driving through it. My issue is when he's gotten on top, a couple times regionally he advanced, but he was fighting like nobody's. When he's gotten on top, especially in a picket fight, he has a tendency to just lay there and guard. And against the guy with Dushko's jiu-jitsu, I think that's very, very, very dangerous, to be honest. And so I'm not even convinced he's going to attempt takedowns early in this fight. In the stand-up, I think we all can agree that Soriano is very live to duke him early in this fight. That's in play. Soriano hits hard. Yeah. Dushko fights with his hands down. That could happen. But I think in terms of the actual striking, Lock touched on it a bit. Dushko's movement's fairly good. I think his striking is way cleaner. His 1-2s, his jabs, and everything. His work, the way he works himself into the clinch, and in the clinch, maybe Soriano can outstrength his way out of there early in the fight. That's possible. But I've seen this idea in a few places now that the clinch game with Soriano, because he's a wrestler, should be good. Guys, I wrestled. We didn't do any cage work. I don't know what the kids are doing these days, but we weren't really working on over-unders along the cage, back then. And whereas I kind of view Dushko's, work on the cage should be, I wouldn't say elite because he doesn't do a ton of damage there, but in terms of head positioning, ability to work for underhooks, I think it is extremely strong. And so, maybe he can't find the position early because of Soriano's strength, but Soriano, I don't trust his cardio at all. I have questions about Dushko's, but Soriano throws 100% into just about every strike. And, if this goes into minute 7, minute 8, and Dushko's just exhaustively pushing him to the fence, I think he can probably keep him there and work the body like he did with Ash. To be honest, people have downplayed the Teddy Ash fight. I actually think Teddy Ash is somewhat decent. He's got good cardio and throws a lot of strikes. So I don't know. Either way, the point I'm getting at is I think Soriano is very live for a KO early. I think for Soriano to win a decision, though, likely involves him having to land takedowns late, similar to the Pickett fight, and lay on top of him. And I sort of think if that happens, he's playing with fire and might get subbed. So, yeah, not this super confident play because of the obvious live KO threat, but 1.5 units on Dushko here. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, you guys pretty much hit on everything for me. I got 2 units on Dushko at -130 as well. I guess just 2 kind of not different points necessarily, but just to add on. Puna's just a 1-round guy historically. Anytime these guys are coming in, they're 1-round guys. I'm immediately looking to potentially fade those guys. And then when it actually came to the Pickett fight, obviously you won that fight via decision. That's great to see in general. And as you touched on, Locke, from a cardio perspective, as soon as he got tired, he actually showed good fight IQ and went to the takedown. So that is good to see, but he went to the takedown because he was tired. So I think there's also, kind of two sides to the coin as to how you look at it. And then at least in terms of the takedowns of Dusko, when Dusko did, the main one, I guess, that I want to point out, when he did get taken down by Popik, he did grab an overhook and use a butterfly to get up relatively quickly. So to me, it wasn't like the fact that he was like controlled extensively. It was like, he got taken down and he immediately looked to get back up and get back to the feet. So it's like, that's something I want to see. Once again, I think there's interesting narratives on the Soriano grind him out, but I guess I also see the skepticism on the other side from, Dusko, I guess, not getting grinded out too. So, I mean, I get it. But to me, it's one of those spots where I think Dusko is the more proven, better fighter, not to mention, he knocked out Pereira. Pereira's never been knocked out in like 35 UFC fights, or I'm sorry, just fights in general. So I think that's important to note, but it's one of those spots where, I get a guy around Pick'em who I think is the better, more battle-tested fighter, has more tools to win the fight, has finishing upside and potential to win minutes too as well. I'm willing to make the bet.
Yeah. So we move on. We got another fun fight here. We got Joaquin Buckley taking on Alessio DiCirico. Lock, you got anything here?
I do have Buckley ending up that parlay with Philippe, and I was one of those guys that was a Joaquin Buckley fader last time around too against Jordan Wright. I really thought a lot of people were like digging way too deep after that crazy KO over Impa Kasanganay, and I still feel like he'll never live up to that hype once again. He is one of those guys that just trudges forward, throws big bombs, and not the biggest for his division, but the dude's a thick, dense dude that just throws bombs. So obviously he's going to have some longevity in that division. Now here against Alessio DiCirico, that guy it seems like his skills have been diminishing over the last couple fights, but he seems a little bit too content with just like with being on his back foot. Like he doesn't mind just being kind of letting his opponent dictate the pace. And that's where I think it's going to get a little bit tricky for him. Now he's never been knocked out in his MMA career. He did get dropped last time. And literally the last thing that we've seen from him was him getting dropped by that head kick by Zach Cummings, where they were just trading at the end of the fight. And I think he really just let his guard down and just kind of was swinging bombs and was hoping that he was going to be the one to drop Zach Cummings there. Unfortunately, he was the one that got dropped. And he pretty much, it came down to that. I mean, I think it was 1-1 going into that last round, and literally that last second he loses the fight. So that was pretty shitty on his end. But in this fight, I totally see it just being Joaquin Buckley just trudging for the entire time, throwing bombs. DiCirico not really doing too much on the offensive. He might be able to land a couple takedowns on Buckley, but he's not going to be able to keep him down. He does not do a good job of keeping guys down, and I think Buckley will do a good job of getting back to his feet. We've seen Buckley control guy, but been controlled before in the past against. I'm trying to remember the guy from Bellator, De Jesus, I think his name was, but that was a much better jiu-jitsu guy than DiCirico was going to be here, right?
Black belt too.
Yeah, black belt as well too. Good point. But yeah, I think that the sneaky spot here is going to be Buckley via decision. I don't think that we'll actually see him land that big bomb on DiCirico here. The last time I checked, I think plus 250-ish was the decision line. You guys can correct that for me if you guys can.
I can look it for you real quick.
Yeah, I think that's a sneaky spot. I think he's just going to be moving forward the entire time, throwing bombs. I don't think he's going to be able to land anything clean enough to truly put DiCirico out. But I think just that motion of just moving forward, throwing those big shots, and DiCirico not really having much in return for that is going to be too much for him. So, I wanted to fade Buckley here again, like just as John went into that tape of Zawada and Amiv to try to bet Zawada. I tried doing the same thing here with DiCirico, and I just couldn't fucking do it. So I like Buckley here. I don't like that straight line. Like it's a little bit too much for me to bet straight, but I didn't mind throwing in that parlay with Philippe to get I think I got plus 110 on that. So I'm happy with that line there. But yeah, I might play a little bit on that Buckley decision as well too, because I think that's a prop line. I think everybody just thinks it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to go out there and knock out DiCirico, but I don't know. I don't see it happening. I think it's going to be a decision for him.
Lex, how are you?
Yeah, so it actually is plus 270. I was just looking at FanDuel.
Nice. Great line.
So as we were talking about, like you brought up the Zach Cummings fight, I actually was almost tempted to play Zach Cummings in that fight because I thought he would just do a little bit more, even though they're both historically low output. I just thought he was going to do a little bit more, but ultimately stayed off because I thought it's going to be that super close fight, and it ended up being that. But here, I just kind of think it's exactly the opposite. Buckley's going to bring that pressure, going to bring that output. And I actually think he is locked for a knockout. I don't think as early as his last two fights, but I think as the damage accumulates, I think that there's definitely a good chance for it here. So Buckley's the second leg to my Amiv by decision parlay. So I have him at minus 275 to close out the parlay for 1 unit plus 200.
Yeah, nice. I sort of come down with Lock here. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
In terms of assigning value on the ML, it's hard. Like, I guess I'd sort of lean G. Carrico just because he's very hard to look good against, just because he's got pretty good defense and, he will counter hard. And consequently, because he throws hard, it seems like every one of his fights turns into these low volume shit shows that end up having just close round after close round. And so, like, I could see that happening here. And so the question for me is, I definitely favor Buckley fairly significantly. I don't think he's going to be as inclined to just go full rabies mode and go in there and just unload the kitchen sink. And so it just makes me nervous, like, looking at the line, that he might get lulled into one of these snooze fests where it's like, oh, someone landing a big shot in the last minute of a round could steal a round. That said, Locke, I agree with you here. I actually didn't even know. I hadn't even looked at it. The Buckley decision line was that wide at plus 275. That's pretty tempting. I've also been looking at the goes to decision at plus 135. Like, just because, like, Chirico in general, outside of the knockdown against Cummings, which, let's be real, was a head kick. Like, everybody's taking damage from that exact shot. It's not like it showed his chin was cracking or anything. He's been pretty durable throughout his career. And Buckley, outside of the Holland fight, which he took on 7 days' notice, has also been pretty durable and probably won't absorb much damage given Chirico's volume. So, like, I haven't played it, but I like the goes to decision at plus 135, and Buckley decision plus 275, kind of nice too.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, sorry, real quick. The line actually has gone up a little bit on FanDuel. It's actually plus 146 now.
Oh, okay.
I personally think a lot of people are going to put merit into that Zach Cummings knockdown. I mean, I think people are just going to be harping on that. Oh, look, his durability is gone, right? I think people are just going to read a little bit too much into that, and I think the decision prop is probably the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And it's not like Buckley hasn't gone to decision on the regionals either. He's gone a couple times. So, Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I think you guys are onto something. I actually put that in my my Patreon prop article this week too. Buckley by decision, I think, was like plus 275. I think that's definitely a sneaky decent play here, at least from like a safe play. And actually what I played from a personal play, I just laid the chalk on the fight starts round 2 at like minus 260. I think it's just an extremely safe play. Once again, I also said that about what's our boy Matt Wyman not dying. He gets slam KO'd for the first time, or I should say the 15th time in 26 years by a guy who's not a wrestler. So you never know. It's a fun sport and whatnot, but that's one thing that DiCarico's proven to do. He's proven to be durable. And the problem I've always just had with him historically is that he just has not done enough. I don't think he's a bad fighter. I really don't. But he's just one of these guys who just does not do enough. And I think that's one thing we have seen from Buckley consistently is that he will go forward and will throw heat. But that kind of gives some credence to what you guys are saying. Like if his game plan to come in here is like, put the dude out in 3 minutes, might get a little bit hairy early on, or later on if he starts to, gas out, like, because, as we touched on, DiCarico ain't some easy guy to finish. But so I think any, play kind of later, fading the whole like Buckley kill KO artist type narrative, I think is kind of the way to play this fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the Buckley hype, I kind of think needs to calm down a little bit. I mean, Alicia is definitely like the second hardest fight Buckley has ever had in his career. I guess maybe Logan. But I mean, Alicia's, he's in the UFC. It's not like he's a top 15 guy, but he's a pretty fucking hard guy to just look good against in general. He's a pretty good, like, stepping stone type guy to just kind of know where you're kind of at. And he's going to just kind of draw out a fight out of you that's pretty low volume. And I don't think, I don't know. I'm not really too sold on Buckley. he's just I don't know. I have part of me wants to play Alicio by decision, just because he gets into these odd fights where you're kind of just limited and just kind of mirroring. And I just Buckley, one way or the other, this is kind of a step up from Jordan Wright and Impa. Just my opinion. So no super strong thoughts, but I don't think that there's any value on Buckley's money line. Goes to distance and Buckley by decision, sure, but I wouldn't rule out Alicio by decision. So
It's plus 400, I think, isn't it?
It's plus 500. But
Shit. Yeah, that's
I just want to throw one thing out there quick. I see some comments saying, Buckley doesn't gas. I'm not saying he's going to here. I'm saying it's not a good game plan for him here to try to sit there and throw the kitchen sink at DiCarico. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, I agree.
yeah, it's hard. DiCarico.
Yeah, he does. Good counterpuncher. But yeah, we'll move on. We got a fun one, the return of Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Li Jingliang. Let's hope he makes it to fight night. Lags, what do you got here?
So I actually have just kind of not so much of a fade on Pons, but just kind of faded of his power, I guess, coming back here. So I actually have a unit on the fight goes the distance at plus 150. So I just kind of think that Leach is going to be durable enough to eat anything coming back. And it was serious surgeries that, he's coming off of, like serious like injuries in general. So I don't know. I kind of think the minus 300 is a little crazy on Pons, even given like I don't think that he's going to come back and be that same type of guy that he was. And even then, he's coming close fights with Mike Perry. So I don't know. I just kind of think any plays on Leach or fight goes the distance or the overs here, I think a good spot.
Yeah, I agree. I actually played Leach for one unit plus 235, and you can actually get better number than that right now. I pretty much, like you said, Legs, this isn't a case of, like Brian Ortega, he had the Holloway fight, and then he spent a lot of time training after he got hurt. This guy, Pons has been in bad shape, like serious viral infection, hasn't really been training for 2 years. And look, Pons at his peak probably takes care of Leach like fairly easily. But even at his peak, like, you go back and watch his fights, and like the Nordi and Taleb fight, that was a really close fight. His fight with Mike Perry, and that was, Mike Perry, who was significantly more underdeveloped than he is today. That was a close fight through 2 rounds. It was 1-1, and then Pons started diving on legs in round 3, which was intelligent. But like the point I'm making is Pons is a killer. Like at his peak, he absolutely is. But he's never really significantly outworked guys. He's relied a lot on power and speed, which is great. But I mean, he's never really gotten really that far ahead on strikes. He's had a lot of close fights in kickboxing matches. I think the same thing with Alan Jovan. And so it's like, I get Leach looked horrible against Magny, but he also had a horrible, horrible game plan. And if you look at his fight before that against Zaleski, he cleanly out-kickboxed Zaleski dos Santos. And, like, while I would rate Pons as a better kickboxer than Zaleski, I don't think anybody would be saying, oh, he should be minus 300 against Zaleski. And so I just look at it and I'm like, I get Pons being the favorite. Take both of them at their absolute best, and Pons is a clear favorite. But he's 34. He's coming off 2 years of serious health problems. And, I do think Leach, people are a little too low on him for the Magny fight. Like, it was a horrible game plan, but – we saw what he could look like before that. And so I kind of think Pons is like 60% here personally. Like I said, not super confident. I favor him, but I do think, Leach is being a little undervalued here. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm extremely overexposed to this fight, and this is coming from someone who's like a Pons truther. I think Pons has actually been probably one of my bigger money trains over the years. But I'm actually going against homeboy Pons here. I got a unit on the Leach straight at plus 225. Definitely didn't get the best of it. I thought we might see a bit more of a Leach surge come in just based on the layoff, but kind of misjudged the line movement on that. So, it is what it is. But I also do have 2 units on the over 1.5 at minus 182. Fun little stat. It's going to be one of these like sweaty type overs, but I played a couple of those sweaty type overs, 3 or 4 weeks ago, like Nchukwi, Pickett. People call me crazy for playing that, but there's certain stylistics, about some of these fights that, just make sense for the overs. And I think this is actually one where, both guys, have defensive irresponsibility, have finishing upside. Usually I talk about that, as I touched on in the Kilburn lingo, under 2.5. But in this scenario, both guys have proven to be super, super tough. Like their over 1.5s hit at 73% since 2016. Like Lee's been dropped like a ton of times, but dude's just not getting put out of there. And you brought up a lot of good points too, John, in terms of at least how competitive this fight can potentially be on the feet. And kind of what my big takeaway and ultimately why I bet Lee straight is that if you go back and watch Pons fights, like when Pons is really having that amount of success, at least early on, in terms of those early knockouts or even earlier in the fights that have went extended, he's really been able to lead the dance in those fights. Whereas if you really go watch Lee fights, Lee's not like conceding like really anything. Like he's really going to give it back to guys. And so that's kind of where I think I don't like Pons to just sit there and walk him down and just completely beat his ass. It's a possibility. I'm not saying he can't do that and could just go out there and knock him out. But to me, I feel like Lee is going to kind of give it back to him a little bit. And like I said, Pons has proven to be super durable as well. So with that being said, also on my over 1.5 narrative, it just comes down to be one of these kind of fights that I classify as like a 3-round war, where like it's kind of a trap that you think, they're going to clash. Both guys have had knockouts, both guys have defensive irresponsibility. Someone's getting knocked out here. I think it kind of goes the other way in this spot. And we actually see this fight go to decision, where Lee's going to give it back to him. And I think we see a competitive fight. Once again, I still cap Pons as the favorite here, but it's a fight that I think where Lee won't accept that back foot. He can make this fight competitive over the course of 15 minutes.
See.
Laying minus 300 on somebody who hasn't fought in 2 years. What could go wrong? Yeah, I don't have like a super strong opinion. I'm just kind of just pass for me. Leash early on kind of like just needs to avoid being chinny. It seems like early on he's kind of got that chin thing going. But yeah, I mean he can make it a competitive fight. Pons should probably look to wrestle. That's like a clear path that he's not going to take. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just, I don't understand how anyone could lay whatever the juice is on that. There's just too much uncertainty. It's not like he's, at least in Connor's case where he's coming off 2 years, he was doing cocaine and stuff, so we knew he was okay. Pons is dealing with some serious surgeries and shit. So, yeah, it's a pass for me.
Lock.
Looks like we got to get some coke over on Seaside and wake this guy up, man. This guy's yawning and rubbing his eyes and shit. Let's liven this shit up. But no, for real. I agree with you guys. I think minus 300 on Pons is absolutely crazy. I mean, I don't know how the line continues to drive itself up. I think people are just going out there and just parlaying. Santiago thinking he's like a shoe-in. The spot that I like the most here, and Luke's already on it as well, the over 1.5. I got it nice and early. I got that minus 165 line. As soon as I saw that, they even set it at 1.5. I was like, something's wrong here, right? And then you run the tape and it kind of affirms it to yourself as well too, right? That both these guys, like on paper, it looks like, yeah, they're swingers and they want to go out there and just throw bombs and might be able to like knock somebody out. I can't wait for you guys to roll out the red carpet and bring Magic in here. God damn it. He's already like a guest on every single episode in the fucking comment section. But yeah, no, I love the over 1.5. I think we will see some striking exchanges here. I'm not an over 1.5 kind of guy. I hate betting overs. It's probably the sweatiest bets I've ever made in my life. Like I've only ever bet one time for a guy to win by decision, and it was Corey Anderson against Glover Teixeira, and that one just came through for me. You know what I mean? The last over that I bet was Dushko Todorovic versus Daquan Townsend, and that hit like 40 seconds. And thankfully, it hit after like 40 seconds. You know what I mean? So I was lucky with that one. So I'm hoping it's not as much of a sweat this time around. But Yeah, again, I truly thought that they're going to set this line at 2.5. When I saw it at 1.5, and I saw it at bettable odds as well too, -165 was a crazy line in my opinion. So I took a shot on that. It's tough to go out there and back Pons here, considering everything that he's been through over the last little while. And I think there's a bunch of recency bias baked into it as well too, because of how monstrous he looked against Neil Magny, who has been killing it as of late. You know what I mean? Goes out there, dismantles Robbie Lawler the way he did, beats Li Jingliang the way that he did as an underdog. You know what I mean? So I think people are reading a lot into that too and thinking, okay, MMA math, let's do this shit. Pons definitely wins this fight if Lee lost to fucking Neil Magny, who got scorched last time by Pons, right? So you got to be careful in that type of thinking and doing those type of mathematics. But I really like I really like the over 1.5 here. That's the spot that I think that is the best if you're going to bet this fight at all. Even the Leech, that plus money, plus 225, plus 250, what he's at currently right now is absolutely insane. So I'm not batting an eye on anybody taking the shot on that too. But yeah, the over 1.5 is definitely something I'm all over. I am picking Pons to win this fight, but again, at that line, absolutely crazy. I'm not touching that with the 10-foot pole. So give me that over 1.5, -165, and I'm chilling.
Yeah, I like it. That's a nice little play. We move on. Co-main. Somehow that fight is not the co-main event, but the co-main event features two guys with a combined 40 losses. We got Matt the Immortal Brown taking on Carlos the Natural Born Killer Condit. Great fight, to be honest, even if they are both years past their primes. I actually have two plays here. Actually, three, kind of. So Carlos Condit is going to complete my Lambo parlay. It's going to be Condit by KO as well. The all-violence parlay. The two plays I have are I have a half unit on Matt Brown by decision, plus 370, and a half unit on Condit by KO, plus 340. Pretty much the thinking is, like, I do think Brown, like, I don't know, when Luke and I were first talking about this, I was like, I love Brown in this spot before I had looked at the tape. And then you look at it, it's like, he's not just soft to the body these days. Like, the first time Baeza hurt him, he didn't even really hit him with a big shot. He kind of just touched him and he got hurt. And I mean, obviously, he proceeded to nuke him later in the fight, but he just didn't react well to shots. And frankly, I didn't think he was reacting great to Saunders either early in that fight. And so it's like I feel like we're reaching, and I hate to say this because I love Matt Brown, but we're starting to reach the Ben Saunders point, Jake Ellenberger point with Matt Brown now, where any kind of like hard shot really wobbles him. And so it's like I do think he's got a very, very clear path to victory if he wrestles, but when was the last time he attempted more than 3 takedowns in a fight? It's been years. And so if he comes out here and trades with Condit, I kind of think it's a matter of time before Condit puts him out. And I don't really think Brown is going to put out Condit, to be honest. He's famously durable. And but like I said, I do think if Brown decides to approach this like he did Wonder Boy and just dive on legs here for 15 minutes, he's going to be able to likely hold him out and likely not get subbed. So even though Brown almost never wins by decision, I actually do think that's his best path here. And conversely, I think if it stays standing, Condit puts him out eventually. So yeah, half unit each way. Again, nothing super confident, but I do think those are the two most likely win conditions in this fight on either side. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so last bet of the – actually, no, I got one more. But I am on this fight. I got a unit on the under 2.5 at plus 135. You kind of touched on it too, man. It's one of these spots where, it's kind of more the consideration of the Condit KOs, say, look on, why don't you just play the Condit KO? But to me, it's like there's just so many disconcerting things I've also seen from Carlos Condit on the ground, despite being a black belt as well, even being submitted by decent guys. Like in the event that, Brown comes out here and does land takedowns, I mean, Condit's going to be aggressive on top. I think that's going to leave opportunities open to pass potentially for Brown. But even on the feet, I mean, Brown just seems like to be this guy who's going to be content to come forward and, just die on his shield, essentially, for better or for worse. Once again, kind of depressing to say. As you touched on, we love Matt Brown, #legend. But at the end of the day, it just seems like kind of one of those spots where, as you touched on too, John, like even outside of the body, like even when he's getting tagged pre-KO, he's not reacting to shots well. Carlos Condit, at least in, this iteration of Carlos Condit, isn't this quote unquote massive hitter, but I don't think it's really going to take that much to knock out Matt Brown in 2021. So it's another fight where I saw a plus number on it, where I think we're going to get relatively high action on with a guy with extremely questionable durability. I think it's a solid play. I like the under 2.5.
See, what do you got?
I honestly didn't look into this much. I just clicked on it by knockout. It took me like 5 minutes to decide that Matt Brown was fucked. So that's my analysis.
Lock, how about you?
I'm with the John side of thinking. Like I do think that Brown does have a chance to win this fight, man. I think that a lot of people are all gaga over Condit's last performance against Court McGee, where he was able to stay at his range, stay at the kicking range, stay at that Carlos Condit range, and just pick apart McGee, who didn't even attempt a fucking takedown in that fight. So if I was backing McGee in that fight, I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? It's almost like John betting on Juan Adams. Hell, you bet on fucking McGee. God damn. Stop betting on these fucking wrestlers who don't end up wrestling. Fuck. But yeah, no, like I think that's truly in people's minds right now. Like if we saw McGee go out there and actually do what he was supposed to do, we're not talking about Carlos Condit even fighting Matt Brown at this point in time. You know what I mean? So the last time Condit finished somebody, Thiago Alves, after he broke his nose with a beautiful elbow in the clinch. So that's not really even a knockout. That was like a doctor stoppage. And then before that, Martin Kampmann, 2013, I was actually at that fight in Indianapolis where he like Max Holloway'd him, where he just accumulation of strikes and then eventually finishing him in that fourth round with just like cardio and pace and pressure. But I think the pace and pressure is going to be on the Matt Brown side here, where he's going to be the one in Condit's face, not letting him get comfortable, not letting him allow him to really get his his strikes going or his kicks going or anything like that. And that's where I think it really comes. Like if he contently just stays on the outside and just lets Condit do work, yeah, he's going to get knocked the fuck out. But I think he has a way better of a chance if he's the one on the front foot. And that's what we've seen from Matt Brown in the past. He does bring the action to his opponent. He does. He's usually the one moving forward, right? And I wouldn't rule it out that he wrestles here. Like I know historically we haven't seen it, but like historically he's not fighting guys that have as horrible takedown defense as Carlos Condit. So you got to be absolutely insane. Like you got to be Court McGee insane to not go out there and fucking take this guy down. You know what I mean? So I think that as crazy as Matt Brown is, as much as a journeyman as he is, I do think that we see him go out there and pursue takedowns and get Condit down. I am slightly worried if he does get him down. Condit, even though he hasn't successfully finished a submission in over 13 years, he still has a very active guard. He had a very close armbar against Michael Chiesa. I think we just need to be very careful in that aspect. So I think this fight is closer to a 50-50 than anything. So I'm happy to take the plus. I took the plus 135 shot on Matt Brown at what unit. I think he's worth it in terms of just moving forward, not letting Condit get comfortable, and continue the losing streak that Condit should be on if McGee went out there and fucking wrestled for John's sake. So I know I like Brown here at dog odds, and again I do think it's closer to a 50-50 fight. So I'll take the dog, and especially against a guy with as horrible of takedown defense as a Carlos Condit. So I'm going with Matt Brown via decision as well. We got to give Condit his daps in terms of his durability. I don't think that Brown will put him out, but I do think we'll see kind of a grind fest for Mr. Matt Brown.
The Immortal. Lags, what do you think?
So I have a unit and a half on the fight does not go the distance at -110. So pretty similar thoughts here. I pretty much think two seasoned vets, they're coming to bang. If Matt Brown chooses to wrestle, I think that ups his chance of winning a decision. But like I said, if that's going to happen, I don't know. But these guys have 90 and 92% finishing rates, and their losses combined for 67% are inside the distance. So I think it's a great spot to play a violent spot here. But sad to see one of these legends probably get knocked out.
Yeah, agreed. Real quick before we move on, not only did I bet Court McGee that night, I also bet Jordan Williams, who gassed for the first time in his career, and Pena, who got subbed by GDR.
I was on that too.
That was John's hanging in the closet. Yeah,
that was a dark night. That was a dark night in the Stargarian household.
It's like these fighters have access to bet MMA tips, and they're just like, "Oh shit, John's betting on me. All right, let me not fucking do the game plan."
The Court McGee thing. He's never attempted under 5 takedowns in a fight.
Mystifying.
It was awful. Anyway, we move on. We got a great main event. The former champion, Max West Holloway, taking on the people some think is a title contender in Calvin Kattar. Luke, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm on Holloway here. And I guess I'll preface right off the top by saying I've always been a big Calvin Kattar fan, and I've said it for years. You guys have been listening to this podcast the past year, and a couple of these Calvin Kattar fights you broke down. I do think Calvin Kattar has some of the best boxing in the UFC, irregardless of weight class. But I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of opinions here, so I'll keep it brief. Ultimately, my big thing here is that I just don't think he's going to be able to keep up with Max, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that. But it's one of these classic level spots to me, and that's not to say Calvin Kattar's shit or Calvin Kattar sucks. I think Calvin Kattar is a solid top 15 guy, but personally, I don't think Calvin Kattar is like a top 3 guy. In a big thing, I guess I do want to note real quick too, at least in terms of like the Volkanovski fight, like when we actually saw Max kick more in that second fight, I think that diametrically changed how that fight played. And that's not to say that like Max went, quote unquote kick heavy, but I think that also limited the potential entries of Volkanovski as well. And I think that gave more tools and more openings up for Max in that sense as well. So I'd like to see him do that a little bit more. That has been a weakness of Kattar in the past. That has been, somewhat a weakness of Max in the past. So you can obviously make that case for Kattar as well. But ultimately, to me, it's just a case of levels. I like Max to box him up over 5.
See, what do you got?
He's out for the moment.
All right, Lock, what do you got?
I do like Kattar here. I'm not 100% sure if I'm actually going to be betting him. I want to keep an eye on the line throughout this week and see where it goes if we do get more Max Holloway love coming in. But I don't know, man. I just have this thing where I love the technique from Kattar. I think he has one of the best boxing technical skills in the division, in the game, first and foremost. And I think I don't want to harp too much on the size here, but I think that's going to be a bit of a factor here too, where this is the first time we're seeing Max Holloway go up against a guy that's taller than him since he fought Cole Miller. And that's all the way back in 2015. And I think that might have a little bit to do with Calvin Kattar's success here in terms of being able to land on Max Holloway, who is very, very hittable. We saw MMA by the numbers drop that stat where he's absorbed like 900 strikes, which is absolutely insane. But he's very hittable. He's there to be hit. My concern is the output of Holloway, right? Like is that going to catch up to Kattar later in this fight? Is Kattar going to be able to withstand it? Like even though Dustin Poirier won a decision against Max Holloway, the strikes, I think Max Holloway outstruck him by like 3 or 4 strikes, but it came down to the more damaging blows. And that's where I think the difference is going to be. I think we're going to see the more damaging blows from the Calvin Kattar side. Now, if Max Holloway tries to go out there and decides to start kicking and going the Alexander Volkanovski way about it, it could add a different wrinkle to this. But historically, we haven't really seen him take that approach. Now, if you want to go over Max Holloway's recent resume, like even outside of the Alexander Volkanovski fights, like I think this is the most technical fighter from a striking standpoint that has decent cardio to go with it that Max Holloway has faced in a while. Like Frankie Edgar, the guy's fucking like 6 foot nothing or 4 foot nothing. You know what I mean? You're not really getting anything out of him. Dustin Poirier obviously lost to him. Brian Ortega had 0 striking in that fucking fight. Jose Aldo, we know his gas tank is nothing after fucking 2.5 rounds, right? Then you got Anthony Pettis. I can break that guy if I want to go out there and break him. I mean, Ricardo Lamas not the greatest striker either. Jeremy Stevens, decent striker. But I think that Calvin Kattar is definitely way more technical, can produce way more problems for Max Holloway, and then we can continue to go on down the list. But I think that caveat is going to be the slight deciding factor for Calvin Kattar to be able to go out there, outbox Holloway, land the more damaging strikes. May not beat him in output, but should be able to beat him in at least superficially as well too. You're going to see Max Holloway a lot more beat up. I think that's going to count for a lot more from the judges as well too. But yeah, the only issue I have with Kattar as well too, he's had some nose issues. He keeps fucking breaking his nose. That might be a little bit of an issue here for Kattar as well too. I think it's going to come down to this primarily being a striking fight, and I think that Kattar is going to have him beat there. The output is my only concern, as well as how Kattar deals with that pace and pressure that Max does put on, that gradual progressive pace that he puts on throughout his fights too, right? If Kattar is able to withstand that, like we saw him get stronger against Zabit, who obviously notoriously has horrible gas tank issues in the third round as well too, right? So this is the first time we'll actually see. We'll see that. What is this guy saying? Like I used. Yeah, we'll see. Unless he fucking breaks his shin on my fucking stomach, and this guy fucking so fragile. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, I like Kattar. I don't mind him at the dog odds, but I do want to see where the line moves throughout the week. I think we'll see a lot of love for Max Holloway to come in, casuals jumping in, seeing Max Holloway against a guy they've never probably even heard of before. So yeah, I'll go with the Kattar side. I think he wins a decision. But I know we haven't seen Holloway finished. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the fight that his chin actually goes. So I do like Kattar here.
See, you missed you. Do you want to touch on this, Kattar Holloway?
Yeah, I've had a lot of thoughts lately about this one. I originally wasn't really going to play anything. I played a little bit of the under. I actually think Max is pretty live for a knockout. Most of my concern, like with not playing Max money line, who like Max tweeted something the other day that I thought was cool as fuck, so I just ripped the money line. I liked what Max had to say, but in actuality, I think Calvin singular, his ability to like his power from like a singular shot standpoint, I think is very hard. I know the DP fight. I think Calvin throws harder singular shots, whereas I think Dustin might be just like have heavier hands. And I think Calvin, he has a pretty good counter game, but the one thing that I've been like going back and forth, and which is why I'm gonna probably end up playing Max, is mostly that I think Max, his ability to just stay at range and understand distance, especially when he's not going against somebody who's gonna leg kick him, it's gonna be pretty big, and I think that's something that Calvin like struggles with. Somebody that's going to match his length and keep him at distance. Like as you can see with the Zabit fight, Zabit's long, kept him at distance, and that's kind of where Calvin starts to struggle. And if you can kind of take away Calvin's jab, it turns into an interesting fight where like I see a lot of comments about how like it's more like Calvin dominating, or if somebody's going to dominate, it's going to be Calvin. Whereas, like, I think if somebody's going to have like one, meme type moment, it's Calvin. But if somebody's going to dominate the fight, it's going to be Max. I think Max can lay it on him. Body head combos, keeping range. And I think the thing with Max is like, people can say whatever they want about the level up, however Max's looks, but in reality, Max has faced, maybe the third best pound for pound fighter in the UFC in Volkanovski twice, and I think Max is probably top 5. And Calvin just doesn't match that. Like, say what you want about the Volkanovski fight, he comes in there the second time, he makes all the fucking adjustments, that you can make. And it's a 50-50 fight. Round 3 is a toss-up, and he drops the decision. So I think Max is still like peak Max level. I don't really see how like you could take away anything from those Volkanovski fights and things like Max is declining when he just literally went fucking 50 minutes with probably the third best fighter on the whole fucking roster. So yeah, I wouldn't rule out the Max knockout though. I really think I think he's going to lay it on to him just in terms of volume. And that's something that's like hard to, just absorbing all that. You could see something late where Calvin's just fucking gas. So, yeah, don't hate it.
Legs, how about you?
So I got 2 units on Max 4-5 decision at -120. So Lock brought up a good point with the pace of this fight. So I know a lot of people will talk about the big fights that, Calvin had success in, the Burgos fight, the Stevens fight. But those guys are pretty stationary targets, there to be hit, not great defensively. And we saw those guys able to push a pace on him. We saw Burgos, even though lose that first round, that second round came back and pretty much outclassed them up until the finish, obviously. And same with Stevens. We saw Calvin have a slow start to that. Jeremy was able to win that first round and then obviously end up getting finished in that second round. I just think that Max's lateral movement and like the mixing up of the attacks to the body, to the head, and if he mixes in that low leg kick enough, I just think that output's going to be too much. And I pretty much just think if Calvin isn't able to have those big moments and hurting him throughout the 5 rounds, I just don't see how he wins the decision here other than knocking him out.
Yeah, I am on Max for 2.5 units and minus 150. I like him quite a bit here, primarily because look, a lot gets made of the volume, and Kattar does throw a lot of strikes. My concern for me, so like if you take Kattar, if anybody's gonna go and box with Kattar, I think he can compete with literally anybody in the division if they're just gonna have a boxing match in the pocket. But if you look at like what's happened to him when guys have played on the outside at all, a lot of times he gets stuck following guys. He doesn't really. You see him a lot kind of get confused when guys are like moving around. Like he doesn't really seem comfortable outside of like pocket exchanges, and I think that's really why his striking ratio is negative for his career. I don't think it's because he's a less skilled striker than a lot of these guys. I think he's a more skilled striker than most. The problem is if you don't have like unlike take Dustin. Unlike Dustin, who actually closes distance really well and cuts off the cage really well. That's what Kattar does not do well. And now look, if Max decides he's going to come for him and they're going to brawl in the pocket, then laying juice with Max is going to look really dumb. But kind of like Steve's point, we've seen Max game plan before. He completely changed his style to fight Volkanovski the second time, and like we saw him do that with Edgar too, where he basically just played the outfight game the entire time. And I pretty much think if he plays that outfighting game, he's going to outclass Kattar here. Like I really. Like that's my personal opinion. Maybe it'll look like a hot take. That's very wrong in hindsight. But I really do think he's going to beat him up badly on the strike numbers and win this like fairly dominantly. I mean, just even looking at the upside, you've seen Max land over 100 strikes 6 times in 3 rounds in 3-round fights, whereas Kattar's most strikes ever landed in a fight were 105 over 5 with Ige. And even that Ige fight, look, he no question won. I was on Kattar big in that fight, but. He lost 1 round definitely, arguably lost the second. Ige was giving him some real issues blitzing in and moving back out really quickly, partially because of like what I said. I don't think Kattar does very well when guys don't stand in front of him. And like Dan Ige is multiple levels below like Max Holloway as a striker. And I don't know. Like I see the angle on Kattar. I see the angle for this being a repeat of the Poirier fight. I just think Poirier does all those things that affect the Max, well, from power, from output, all of that he does better than Kattar does. He closes distance better than Kattar. And so to me, it's going to come down to, look, if Max decides to brawl, it's probably a 50-50 fight or slightly in Kattar, no question. If he does that, we're going to look like schmucks, no question. State of Hawaii flag will be burning come Saturday night. But I really do think if Max decides to fight intelligently, I don't think the kicks matter. I don't think any of that matters. I honestly think he can get in and out here and touch Kattar up pretty easily. Like seriously, like I kind of think he's going to outstrike him by 50 to 70 strikes in this fight. He's going to win 49-46, something like that. We'll see. I could be wrong. That's why we do this, right? We're all putting numbers on fights. Lord knows.
No, I agree with you, John.
So it's, but yeah, I like Max a lot. I have 2.5 units on him. We'll see what happens. We got 2 more shows coming up. We got one Tuesday. We got one coming up next Thursday. We'll have Lock on again before too long. It's a great guest. Thank you for stopping by, Lock. We appreciate it. And Saturday afternoon, we got the return of the UFC. Once again, guys, our podcast is now sponsored by BetOnline. If you use our promo code, which is CLUBSUB, you can now get 50% added to your first deposit up to $1,000. So again, our promo code is CLUBSUB. And if you enjoy the podcast week to week, please drop a like and subscribe. Also, follow Lock at MMA LOTN. Lock, you want to give a quick shout out to your shit?
Yeah, just everything is pretty much MMA LOTN, YouTube, Twitter, IG, all that shit. And I got a bunch of shit coming up. So just hit up the Twitter and you guys can see my entire schedule about the next fucking 10 days where I got a stream almost every fucking day, but we're killing it over here. So appreciate you guys having me on. You guys are a great bunch as always. And I can't wait to see the growth and the progression of the Club and Sub podcast in 2021. And the BetOnline sponsorship is fucking huge. So shout out to you guys for securing that. And I can't wait to get this fucking schedule going. It's been 3 weeks without fights. Let's fucking go.
All right, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight. As usual, I'm John Stargarian, MMA. You can find me on Twitter, MMA Fox, with Luke at SWR_betting, Lags at Lags_the Capper, C at CHanson10, and we were joined, thanks again, by Lock at MMA LOTN. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.